One of the most common things that my clients want help with is about their communication or influencing, or the ability to influence, lead other people, whether it's their team or influence their boss. And they think it's about their communication skills that is the problem. But actually, when we dig in, most of the time, it's about their willingness to communicate. So I'm not saying that they don't need to improve their skill set. And I'm working with somebody who, because of their imposter syndrome, has a quite a narrow way of behaving. And that's pretty typical. It's not unusual. And we're expanding their ability to think and behave in different ways to achieve better results in the ways they've never done before. That's the skill set. But what was really underneath was their fear of found out of not being good enough, which is imposter syndrome. So this is what this short training is about. I talk about imposter syndrome a lot. There's other trainings and videos you can see, but I want to talk about what we think is the real issue, which is about communication, but it's not. It's what imposter syndrome or fear of failure or fear of being judged or criticized or whatever you want to call it does to how we communicate. So apart from holding back their careers and businesses, people with imposter syndrome change how they communicate with each other. So they either over communicate, so they speak more than they need to. The reports that they write are long or include details that are not needed or wanted. They often speak first rather than let others go first. So they've got to make sure that they're heard first. Because if I can tell you and keep telling you and keep telling you and keep telling you, then you're going to believe me and everything's going to be okay. You're not going to be found out. So they do this to prove to others they know what they're talking about. So they won't get found out as not being good enough, smart enough, incompetent, or whatever is going on that's been created by this imposter syndrome thinking. So that's the first one. They try and convince too much in too many different ways. Or they under-communicate. They hold back from speaking up when they have the knowledge, and they really should be doing so, because that's their remit. So I talk to a lot of people who stay quiet in meetings. And the interesting thing is, when I point out to them, which sort of meetings are you quiet in? It's often with meetings where possibly with superiors or people that they feel threatened by. Other times when they're working with people where they feel more comfortable, they don't do this because the imposter syndrome thinking hasn't been turned on, which is, as I explained in another video, imposter syndrome thinking is selective. Sometimes we use it, sometimes we don't, which is one of the 3 proofs I used to show you that you can change it very quickly, because we don't use it all the time. We're selective. So they hold back from speaking up when they could and they should, because they won't take the risk of speaking just in case they are found out. They are not good enough. So I don't really like the phrase imposter syndrome, because it's just a label. What I look for, whereas with my clients, is we find out where they don't think they're good enough and where speaking up is a risk, where they could be found out. So people have lots of different ways of communicating, and there's many styles and many ways of getting your message across. But the 2 biggest things that imposter syndrome does is it makes people over communicate or hold back. So being good enough is what imposter syndrome is really all about. It's a mistaken belief that intelligence, skills, experience are not good enough. Somebody else will find out. Somebody else will contradict me. So I've got 2 clients in my head. One of them is always trying to convince. The other one always holds back. And that's been their pattern. And the good thing about that is it just shows, again, it's selective. You can choose one or the other. Therefore, you can choose to do something different. That's what I like about working with people. When you find the reasons why they've got this mistaken belief or these behaviors that don't get the best results, when you find out why, you can change it. So when we are looking at people with imposter syndrome, they have a problem with not being good enough. But when I ask them, well, when will you be good enough? What's the absolute definition of when they'll be good enough? They don't have an answer. It's incredibly rare for them to have an answer. And this is what creates what I call a sabotage loop, when this can go on for years and years and years. And most people have this for years. And it goes round and round and round in circles for years, because they never have a proof of when they will be good enough. And if you give me a call, I'll explain why that is, and what the mechanism is, so you can understand it. This is not the purpose of this video. But actually having a definition of when they'll be good enough is actually a threat. It's a problem. So most people with imposter syndrome, not being good enough, don't actually have a level of when they will be good enough, or when that will be. So they end up having it for years and years and years. So some people know where their imposter syndrome comes from. Others have no idea. It's an accident of thinking. Often we don't even realize we've created it. It happens most of the time when we're very young. So what most people have, 90% plus of people have, is a way of thinking that is created before we ever go to work, which gets in the way of our businesses and our careers and earning money and enjoying ourselves and being successful, which has nothing to do with business, but we bring it along, end up messing up our business. And I promise you, I did it. I've done this. I don't just work with people on it. I had to get myself through it because I couldn't find out how to do it. And that's the biggest problem. I had excessive self-doubt created by something which has nothing to do with work whatsoever when I was 5 years old. But that made me under-promote myself. I was incredibly good at doing this, but I just didn't want to tell anybody. I think I've got it fixed, don't you? So most importantly, it's just a mechanism of how to do it, and we don't know. So we know how to do that. That's easy. It's our speciality. It takes about 4 weeks. That's it, 4 weeks. Doesn't matter how long you had it. It doesn't matter whether you know why it's there or you don't know why it's there. Makes no difference. We find that out in the first 2 hours. So 4 weeks is the predictable time we give it, because the process that people use is the same. The reasons are different. Everyone's are unique, but the process we use in our head is the same. So if it's time for you to stop doubting your skills and start using them, so you stop holding back, or you stop trying to convince people, and this leads to leadership and management styles that don't work very well sometimes, or you're holding back and people are not recognizing you for your talents, and you're frustrated with this because you don't speak up, then get in touch and ask us about the Alpha program. Just say, hey, the Alpha program, what is it? How can it help me? Yeah, I think I've got imposter syndrome. It's very rewarding and actually quite cathartic just to say, yeah, I've just got excessive doubt. I'm actually a CEO of a big organization, or I've just started out and I won't let myself move to the next level. It doesn't matter where you are, but opening yourself up to somebody who's not going to judge you, understands it, is actually a very nice thing to do. It's a bit scary for about 10 seconds. And then we just say, okay, let's find out why you're doing it. Let's get it turned off. And it's that not wanting to be judged which stops people reaching out. And that's part of how the sabotage loop works and how we don't let ourselves break it, because we don't want to turn it off. And if you give us a call or message us, we'll arrange a call and I'll explain why that happens. So I guarantee you, give me 4 weeks. I don't care how long you had it. If you're fed up and frustrated enough because you know you're underperforming, you could do more. You're not enjoying what you're doing, you know you can achieve more, or just do more of what you want, then just get in touch. Email us, book a call straight in, click one of the links that are bound to be around wherever you're watching this, and get in contact. And then don't back off when we reply and say, hi, how can we help you? So many people do that because that's the imposter syndrome kicking in, going, oh, I'm too scared. And it takes control. So if you don't want to let thinking from probably your childhood be in charge of your income and your life and how you look after your family and all the things you want to do, if you're fed up with that, send us a message and we can turn it off in 4 weeks. Promise you. Okay, take care. Hope this has been useful, and I'll talk to you soon.